Look at all these books. Hey, you already know what time it is. It is time for a May wrap up. I'm surprised I may have been doing this video. I had a whole other video planned for the books that I read this month, but I gave up on that video, so now we're doing a May wrap up, which I'm not mad about. I read 12 books this month, which is crazy. I read 3 series, also super crazy. But yeah, with that being said, let's just get into the first series that I finished this month. In my April wrap up, the last book that I read was Twisted Love. I started the Twisted series and I finished the Twisted series in May. So I have Twisted Games, Twisted Hate, and Twisted Lies. I love this series. I did talk about Twisted Love a little bit in that video, but I will say that I loved that book. I gave it a 5 stars. It is my second favorite book in this series. The second book we had Twisted Games. This is about Bridget and Reese. Bridget's going into royalty whether she likes it or not. Reese is her bodyguard. So this book is split into 2 parts. Part 1 is before the whole huge royal thing where she's going to her country. So she's still in the United States with Reese, with her friends and everything. I did give this book a 4 stars, but the only thing was that part 1 was a little slow to me and I wasn't too big on it, but part 2, when she was over in her own country and dealing with all the royalty stuff, I actually really enjoyed it. So the only reason why I gave it a 4 stars was because part 1 was just a little slow to me, and I didn't like Reese at first just because he was, I don't know, he just seemed kind of rude. Bridget was very sweet. I love the friend group in this whole series. I love all the girls. Very close and it's really sweet to read about. I feel like this is a lot of people's favorite in this series, but it was my 3rd favorite. Then we have Twisted Hate, which was my favorite in the series. It's about Josh and Jules. I don't know. I love this book so much. Josh was such a sweet guy. He was my favorite guy out of all 4 of them. I think girl-wise, Ava in Twisted Love was my favorite. This book was fantastic. We're dealing with Josh, who is Ava's brother from the first book, and then Jules is Ava's best friend, so it's like a best friend's brother. No, it's a brother's best. Why can I never get this right? It is best friend's brother. There we go. Yeah, which I don't read a lot of that type of trope or any form of that type of trope, but I actually really liked it. Gave this book a 5 stars. This is also forced proximity in the beginning. I did say that when Twisted Games ended, there was a night in Twisted Games where these 2 characters, everybody's like, oh, where are they? Like, what are they doing? I thought this book was going to pick up right where that left off, but it didn't. The night that they have in this one was a whole different night than the one in Twisted Games, which threw me off a little bit, but it was still, everything played out very well. Yeah, I love their relationship in this. I think I liked it so much because I also really like secret dating for some reason, which I don't know if there's any other books like that. I'm assuming there probably is, but I don't think I've read anything like that. But I had a dream one time about like a whole secret dating thing, and I think that's why I might like it so much and want to read about it. But yeah, if you like any of those tropes, I recommend the whole series. You can read this as a standalone, but I think you should just read the whole series. And then the last one we had Twisted Lies. I did not like this book, which I guess it was good and bad that it was the last book in the series because I didn't like it. So it was kind of just, you know, like wrapping it up for me. I just got through it and was done. But I don't know, I wish I did like this one because a lot of people were saying this one was really good too, but this is my least favorite. I did not like Christian at all. It was one of those things where I guess love at first sight, and he saw Stella and was like, I want her. But to me, that's sweet if it's done in the correct way, but I think in this one he just came off as kind of creepy, a little arrogant, like he knew what he wanted and he was gonna get it no matter what like she thought about it. So I don't think I like that aspect of it. He was one of the guys that was the most focused on his job and didn't really like care about anyone else. He seemed kind of not in a good mood at all times, and I didn't vibe with him. I think this book was kind of all over the place a little bit. It didn't really stick to the story. There was a lot of side things that Christian was doing with his job and his business partners, so there was just a lot thrown into the plot that kind of didn't add to it for me. So yeah, wasn't a fan of this one. Overall, I would give the entire series a 4 star. This one just really didn't do this for me. I gave this a 2.5 star. So yeah, that is the Twisted series. I enjoyed this so much. I'm glad I finally read it. If you haven't read this yet, I do recommend. Let me know what your favorite book was of this series because I'm curious. I feel like everybody has completely different opinions on all of these 4 books. Second, I had another series on my little series grind here. I started the Never After series by Emily McIntyre. The first book, if you don't know, is Hooked. So these are all kind of reimaginings. This is a Peter Pan reimagining. These are dark romances, so it gets intense, and if you don't like that type of stuff, then I would skip this series. There are trigger warnings in the beginning, so if you read those. They don't go too into detail about what you will see in this book, but it does give you a very brief description of what is going to be happening. This was my second favorite in the series. This is about James, who is Captain Hook, and Wendy, who is Peter's daughter. There's a bug crawling on my window. Get off. James sees Wendy at this bar that he owns, and he's like instantly infatuated with her. He knows that she's Peter's daughter, so he's kind of like trying to get to her to get revenge on Peter. So he's kind of using her in a way, but he obviously, you know, really likes her. All these books in this series are very fast-paced. I've never read a dark romance before either, so I think this was a good series to start out with in that case, because they are not too short of books, but they're around like 300 pages. The second book I think is almost 400 pages, but the rest of them are a little over 300. So they're very fast paced, and I would recommend them if you are just starting to get into dark romance. I gave this one 4 stars. And the other thing with this one too, there were a lot of plot twists at the end, which I love plot twists, but they wrapped up extremely fast. So it was like page after page, it was, you know, you were finding out like a few different plot twists, but then it was the end of the book. So it was like you have the story, which it was a very good pace throughout the entire story, but then the very end, you were just throwing a lot of stuff, and then it was kind of over. That was the only thing I didn't like about this book. I just feel like there were too many plot twists. Next up, we have Scarred, which was my favorite in the series. This is a Lion King type deal we got going on. So this is more of a royal type book. We're dealing with Tristan and Michael, who are brothers. Michael is the king and Tristan is the scarred prince. And Sarah does not like this family, so she is going over there to become Michael's wife and then try to take down the family. Little does she know Tristan is planning to do the same thing because he does not like his brother. He wants to take over. I really loved Sarah and Tristan's relationship in this, and I think the plot was very good, very strong. Because I'm not too big on romance books that don't have a very strong storyline other than the romance, but this one really did it for me, and I honestly wish this book was a series itself. I wish this had more books just with these characters and everything. I gave this book a 4.75 star. It didn't have that 5-star feeling, but I still really enjoyed it a lot. I recommend this one a ton. You don't have to read these in order because none of the characters intertwine with each other in these books, so you can read these as standalones, and if you want to read any of these, I would recommend this one. Okay, and then next up we have Wretched. This is the third book. This is the Wizard of Oz reimagining. This is about Evelina and Nick. And Evelina is actually the villain in this one. After the first 2 books, I was wondering if we were going to get a female villain, and we did the next book, so that was cool. But this one was extremely, like, I just feel like this was crazy fast paced and not a lot happened with the sub story. The romance was there, of course, because it's a romance book, but I don't know, I just felt like there was no depth to the plot, and that throws me off a lot when there's not a strong storyline behind the romance. So I think if I picked this book up as a standalone and just read it, I would not have liked it, but since it was kind of just part of the Never After series and I was getting, you know, like the dark romance vibes and everything, that made me not hate it as much. Nothing really caught my eye. I did give this a 2.5 star. So this is Evelina. She is pretty independent. She's working with her family, her father and her sister, but she is kind of trying to take them down too. They are running a drug empire. I feel like this book could have got very, very intense, but it just didn't. And then last up we had Twisted, which is an Aladdin reimagining, and this one was a little better than Wretched. I still didn't really like it though. The first 2 books were strong for me, but the last 2 just didn't really do it for me. I gave this a 3 stars. There were some points in this book that were really interesting to me, and then there were other ones that I just didn't care about. I just tried to get through pretty fast because it just wasn't interesting me. I feel like most of this book was pretty slow with the plot, but then the end it was kind of all pushed in there, kind of like Hooked was. Hooked was more intriguing throughout the beginning of the book, and then the end was obviously crazy like this one, but the beginning of this one was super slow to me. So this one is about Yasmin and Julian. Julian is a villain in this one, and he is dealing with family issues, and then Yasmin is daughter of like the richest man in the world, and he is having health complications, so she doesn't have much time left with him, but her father just will not let her get into the family business and like run it and be in charge of it. So he's trying to get her to marry a guy very quickly so that way he can take over the whole family business, which is kind of messed up. I feel like if, you know, you should trust your daughter to take over, I feel like that would be the best option, but he's very, very insistent on getting her a husband. Obviously Julian comes in, kind of like a fake dating type thing, But yeah, this is also kind of a love triangle. There's another guy thrown in there. It was okay, just wasn't a huge fan. So that was the last of the Never After series for now. There is another book coming out. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to read that one. I think if it gets a lot of good reviews from people that I follow, then I might read it, but if not, and a lot of people are just saying it's kind of an average book, I don't know if I will pick it up. Yeah, these covers are very pretty. I love how these books look together. Overall, I would probably give this series a 3-star. Wasn't too big on it, but it wasn't bad. I didn't hate it. And then the last series that I did read for this month was a series that I was very nervous to get into because I wanted to like it so bad. That is the Dreamland Billionaire series by Lauren Asher. These are the first books that I've read by her. I was kind of nervous going into them. I know she has a Dirty Air series too, and I really want to read that one, but I picked this one up first. First book we have is The Fine Print. I actually did really love this book. I gave this one 5 stars. I think it was a great intro book to a series. I love the whole concept behind the series. So the series follows 3 brothers who are inheriting their shares of their grandfather's business. So they have an amusement park and kind of like other side business type things going on, but the main thing is this amusement park called Dreamland that is in Florida. The brothers live in Chicago, but their grandfather passes at the beginning of this series, and they all get these separate notes that say they have to do something in order to obtain their inheritance from the grandfather, which is like billions of dollars from the company. They get their share of the company. So if they want all this money in their share of the company, they have to follow what his letters say. So this one is about Rowan and Zara. Rowan, I feel like that sounds wrong when I say it out loud. It sounds right in my head. I don't know why his name sounds weird. But he has to go to Dreamland and become the director for 6 months. So he immediately meets Zara when he gets there. I really like these two. They work very well together. I love the whole amusement park aspect of it. I was skeptical about at first. I don't know why. I don't know. I just think it was very interesting, and I like the whole concept of the grandfather's will and their letters going into the second book, which was Terms and Conditions. We get Declan and Iris in this one. I didn't like Declan. Iris was great. I loved Iris. But I don't know. I think it was the whole, this one is about forced marriage and kind of like a fake marriage. I know romance books, obviously the characters end up together, but I'm not really big on the whole marriage aspect. I just like seeing them start out and then like fall in love. But Declan is supposed to become the CEO of the company. He has to marry someone and have a kid, which is kind of absurd if you ask me, because that's a lot to ask of your grandchild, to find a girl and marry her and then have a kid like in a very short amount of time. I don't know. I just wasn't feeling this one. I gave this one a 3-star just because it was part of the series and I did enjoy this series a lot. I don't know. I didn't like the storyline in this. I didn't like the whole forced marriage part. I didn't like Declan. So that is that. Lastly, we have Final Offer. This is Callahan and Alana. I really like Alana. She's a very strong female character. I like this one because it was based in a lake house. This lake house is in Michigan, so Callahan used to go to this lake house. Him and Alana were best friends when they were very young, and then obviously they kind of had a budding romance when they were younger. They dealt with stuff. They went through a relationship, and then things broke off, and Callahan went back to Chicago. Obviously, he's been there for a while, and then he hasn't seen Alana in a very long while, but his letter from his grandfather said that he had to go back and sell this lake house that Alana is living in, and his grandfather actually told Alana that she was the owner of the house, but her and Callahan actually both own the house. So Callahan has to go back and sell this house in order for him to get his share. So obviously there's feuding going on there because Alana loves his house. It's on the lake. It's dream house kind of. There's a kid in this, which is normally not my thing, but I liked this child a lot and I think it was sweet. The only thing about this, I feel like it was extremely long, which I love me a good chunky long romance, but it was long in the sense that it was repetitive and not really adding to the story too much. But that was really the only thing that threw me off, is just the repetition and the length of it. I love the lake house thing and the ending with the brothers and their shares. It does tie together. I think that aspect could have had a little more too, but other than that, I really enjoyed this series. I just didn't really like the second book. So overall, I'd probably give this series 3.75 star. They look very pretty together. The fine print is my favorite cover in the entire world. I will say that probably forever. I don't know why I like it so much. I just do. But yeah, that is the Dreamland Billionaire series. I do recommend this one. I think it was very wholesome. There's a lot of strong character relationships in this one, which I love all the time, of course. And then that was all the series for this month. But then I finished all of those about a week and a half before the end of May, I believe. So I did pick up 2 more books that I read. And I did go on a little trip but I was on the beach and I started Every Summer After, and then I finished this a few days after that. This was a book that I wanted to read last year and I never got to, but now that it's kind of going into summer, I wanted to pick this up first. That way I could read it and see why everybody loves this book. So I did read Love in Other Words, which this book is compared to that a lot, and honestly it was the same. I didn't like Love in Other Words, and this is pretty much the same storyline, so I didn't really like this one either, and I think I liked it less because I read Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren first, so it was kind of just seemed like a repetition of that. I did give this a 2.5 star. I didn't really like the characters. So this one deals with, I already forgot her name. I always forget the girl's name. I don't know why. Is that bad? I remember the guy's names, but I never remember the girl's names. So Persephone, they call her Percy. So this follows her and Sam and his brother Charlie. Well, they both have lake houses, and growing up they would always hang out. Sam and Percy became very close friends, and obviously they had their little fling as teenagers. This is based in Canada, so she lives in Toronto, and then the lake house is a couple hours away, I believe. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, so they only see each other every summer, and obviously there was a big deal with the two of them and kind of how they stopped seeing each other, and then Sam and Charlie's mother actually passes away. She was sick. Charlie calls Percy, tells her the news, then Percy is going back to the city in this lake house to go to the funeral. She is seeing Sam for the first time in, I think it was 6 years. Maybe I'm getting that mistaken. It's told over the course of 6 years, and then the 1 week in present time. So this is a back and forth thing, which I'm always iffy about that, because if it goes like way back when they were younger, it just always makes me feel like the present tense version of the characters kind of immature. I don't really feel like the characters ever feel different to me, or they don't really feel older to me. So I don't know if that was just me with this book. It just makes it a little hard to get through. That was my first summary type read. Yeah, that is Every Summer After. And then going into my last read, unfortunately we're ending the month on a pretty bad note. I read this book in a day just because I wanted to get it over with. It's The Hating Game by Sally Thorne. This has been on my TBR for quite a while now. Honestly, I hated it. I'm not gonna lie. I know this is a romance book. You can judge me all you want for saying this, but it was just not, there was no story. Okay, here's the thing. I'm gonna talk about this book and I'm gonna say some things. There's parts where I obviously skimmed through because I wasn't enjoying it, so I don't know if these things were actually mentioned and cleared up because I was just kind of skimming and reading it fast and skipping over. But it's called The Hating Game, and obviously these characters start off and they hate each other, but I don't know if it was ever really said why they hate each other. There was never a good reason for the hate between them. This was obviously like an enemies to lovers trope, but it was not done well. It was one of those things where it was, I want to say a fake hate, because it was like, oh, we're enemies, we hate each other, but I've kind of loved you this whole entire time and I've just been keeping it a secret, and I'm just kind of bullying you a little bit and acting like the kid in elementary school who has a crush. Main character in this, Lucy, is also pretty judgmental, which I hated. She was constantly talking about guys' appearances and her exes and how they were only like 5'6" and that they couldn't even like pick her up and stuff. I'm like, okay, well, like, you pick them up then and you throw them around. Like, I don't, what do you want? You know what I mean? Like, you dated them, so you obviously like them. But then Josh, of course, is this whole 6 foot something tall, muscly guy who looks good all the time, and that was just like, you know. And there were other things that were said about her co-workers, calling them names. It's hard to determine whether or not that is the character, because I mean, obviously, you know, characters have their own personality and everything, but it was also written by an actual human, so I don't know if it's intended to be the character or if it was, you know, writer. I don't know. I've never read any other book by her. I don't know if any are like that. But this was one of those books where I just don't see how people liked it. If you did, I mean, you did. That's not gonna change, but for me, I didn't see anything good about this book. I just couldn't get past the whole constant physical descriptions of characters that made it seem like anyone that didn't fit those physical descriptions was unattractive or wrong or not a good person. And yeah, there was no real hate in this, because it instantly went from them hating each other and then they were like kissing within the first chapter, which that threw me off. It happened and I was like, why is this happening right now? There's no way this should be happening. He hates her. I wanted to DNF this book, but I just pushed through, and I kind of wish I didn't. Yeah, also, if you look at the cover, they have very dark eyes on this cover, and in the book they both have blue eyes, which I know it's just an illustration, it's a cover, but I feel like the cover should depict the characters. And also they just look like twins on this. And I guess I'm glad I got this off my TBR, but I'm kind of sad that I ended the month with a 1-star book. If you like this book, I'm sorry, but I didn't at all. So yeah, that is A Hating Game. You know when you read a romance book and you fall in love with the two characters and you're just rooting for them, like anything that happens with them, any interaction, you're just like obsessed with and you want to see what happens so bad. I love that. But this one, it was the complete opposite. I didn't like either of these characters, and it was kind of like when they were getting together, I just didn't want it to happen. I was rooting against them. I just feel like they were both very bad people. Guess they maybe deserved each other in that sense, but I was enjoying reading a lot of the reviews on Goodreads for this because it always makes me feel a little better when I don't like a book and then I read reviews of other people who don't like a book, because I always feel bad not liking a book, but it happens. It's always gonna happen, and this was just one of those instances for me. And I am all romanced out. It sucks because I want to go into my summer TBR, and most summer books are romance books, but I need a little break because I just read 12 romance books, more than that in a row, because I had books in April that were also romance. So now I am going into fantasy a little bit. I'm reading The Fourth Wing. That is the first book I will read in June. That is a super hyped book. I am excited for that one. So yeah, that will start off my month of June. That is it. That is my May wrap up. Those are all the books that I read last month. I will see you in my next video, whatever that may be. If you like this video, if you want to see more, you can subscribe, like this video, comment, whatever you want. It doesn't matter. You can comment the most random thing. I don't care. But yeah, that's it. I will see you guys next time.